Okay, the first item on the agenda is to accept or modify the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next is community participation. Community participation is a time intended for the public to give input on relevant school issues and not intended to be a question and answer period, as this may be the first time the board has heard this information. Please do not expect individual responses or comments by the board at this time, but be assured that any concerns will be reviewed. Please print your name on the sheet at the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Come on up,
I
man.
mean, you guys get tired of your...
No, never. You always leave me with something to ponder.
Well, that's good.
It is.
Well, Dr. Ballinger, members of the board, before I go into the more serious part of my comments, can you understand me okay? No. No, okay. I'm 6 feet away. Before I go into the more serious part of my comments, I want to thank Dr. Ballinger, his central office team, and the school board for recognizing that laughter is the best medicine. Thank you for our virtual convocation speakers, Dr. Gary Brooks and Eddie B. Dr. Brooks was very inspiring, and of course he's also always very humorous. And Eddie B had us laughing so hard our stomachs hurt. They hurt from laughing, not COVID. Next week, our community and local news media will closely watch Warren County Public Schools as we start school in a way we never have before. Some will expect us to fail. Some may even hope for it, but most will cheer us on. We will have mistakes and glitches, but we won't fail. We will learn from our mistakes and turn those experiences into learning opportunities. That is one of the most important life skills we can teach our students, to realize that mistakes are not failures, but learning opportunities. In an online conference that I attended this summer, a famous music educator, Dr. Artie Alameda, reminded the 200 plus music educators, which were from every continent, except of course Antarctica, that it's not hard, it's just new. I challenge school board members, WCPS staff, students, parents, and yes, community members, to remember that as perhaps a mantra as we face the challenges of this year. It's not hard, it's just new. And by doing so, we will turn our mistakes into learning opportunities and our learning opportunities into great successes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, members of the school board, David Downs, 160 Old Browntown Road. First, I'd like to start off by commending everyone for the Herculean effort that has gone into completely revamping what we used to know of as school. I feel like I dodged a bullet. Thank you, Dr. Pence. The reason I'm here is because I've spoken before a couple other political bodies concerning a epidemic in our community, and I'm not referring to the pandemic known as COVID-19, but rather a drug overdose issue that is spiking throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia and throughout the United States. There are all kinds of possible reasons for this. One I would like to surmise, one of the tragedies of COVID is that our socializing for those in most need is turned upside down. And those most depressed and in need of role models, peer support are not getting it. For whatever reason, I think everybody in the room is aware that a couple weeks ago we lost a 16-year-old girl in the community. As a parent of twin 13-year-olds, I envision that I'll watch them graduate, get married, have kids, and maybe someday they'll mourn my death. It should not be the other way around. And for those reasons, I'm going to ask everyone on the board to take up and consider an issue that has been about the Commonwealth for a little over a decade now, and that's drug testing of athletes in the school. I have brought with me the guidelines, the protocols from the Department of Education, giving the authority, the rationale behind them. I have provided in a pamphlet for each one of the school board members a form that's used by Clark County. They've used it for a little over a decade. An article surmising that it's been extremely successful. Anecdotal stories where it seems to have some impact. These are the leaders in the school. Other students look up to the athletes. They set the bar. If they know for a fact they're not using, it's what the cool kids are doing, as opposed to the opposite. My background makes it extremely ironic that I appear before this body making this request. 33 years criminal defense. I've represented hundreds, if not thousands, of drug users, drug dealers, drug addicts. I've been an advocate on Normal's legal committee for the past 3 decades, advocating for the decriminalization of marijuana. I love beer. I started the first state beer museum in the entire country. So that doesn't change the fact that these are children not capable of making responsible decisions. It looks like Clark County expends about $2,500 to $3,000 a year. That means that I may have to turn to Mr. Mabe in the room and some other people involving purse strings. I may have to look to some nonprofits in the community. I know in the multiple nonprofits that I work with, I'm prepared to back the funding initially to get this thing started if it appears to be prudent. It needs to be investigated. I understand that it has not been raised, at least in the time that Mr. Williams has been chair.
Mr. Downs, we're out of time, so surmise it all for us. I don't want to run you off.
I do apologize.
No, but give us.
I'm used to being paid by the word.
I understand. No.
With those
closing argument.
Those are my closing arguments. With this, I've got pamphlets for everyone. I apologize for explaining.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on. But I was remiss at the beginning. We have the Board of Supervisors here tonight, and I forgot to mention that, and I'm sitting here looking at them, so welcome. We're glad you could join us this evening. And also, Dr. Daly somewhere here. I don't know where. But, all right, next item on the agenda, next thing is consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item, presentation of the Roy K. Bowles Wall of Recognition inductees. Dr. Ballinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could ask Sharon Boyles if she would mind coming up.
Absolutely.
The Roy K. Boyles Wall of Recognition was created in 2017 by the Warren County School Board. The inaugural inductee of the Roy K. Boyles Wall of Recognition was Roy K. Boyles. As a long-standing supporter and contributor to the education system in Warren County, Roy exemplified the criteria needed to be considered as a member of the Wall of Recognition. Nominees must have had a direct connection to Warren County Public Schools, Examples of nominees are any Warren County Public School employee, school board member, or other local or regional board members, a specific group that has had a dramatic influence or impact on Warren County Public Schools. If the nominee is an individual, they must have been out of their field of service for at least 5 years. Nominees need to have had a positive and lasting impact on the Warren County Public School System. The 2020 inductee being honored tonight is Dr. Frederick P. Logan, Jr.
You want to bring your family with you, Dr. Logan?
I think my wife said she'd rather just stay there.
And Dr. Logan, if you
Come on
mind.
over here.
Dr. Logan received his bachelor's from Clark University in 1968 in sociology, a master's in education from East Carolina University in 1969 in guidance, his educational doctorate from Virginia Tech in 1977, vocational and technical education. His occupations have been counselor at Halifax County High School, graduate research assistant at Virginia Tech, alternative education teacher in Warren County Public Schools, career education coordinator, Warren County Junior High School, Warren County Middle School, vocational education coordinator, Warren County Public Schools, assistant principal, Warren County Middle School. His community service is he has served as a youth soccer coach, a ruling elder, and the president of the South Warren Rotarian, I have a hard time with that word. Rotarian Club. Outstanding Young Educator, recognition is Outstanding Young Educator in 1981. Accompanied tonight by his wife, Andrea, son Zach, granddaughter Lydia, daughter Rachel, and son-in-law Logan. Did I get that right?
Son-in-law George.
Huh?
Son-in-law George and
George.
grandson.
Oh, grandson Logan. Okay, that's my mistake. I apologize. Congratulations.
Dr. Logan, better known as Rick, congratulations.
I asked Arnold if I could say a couple of words because I've never been at a loss for words. So anyway, I really appreciate this award. I feel honored and humbled. Never expected, to tell you the truth, I didn't even know it existed. Basically, I just went to work every day and tried to do the best job I could. Worked under a lot of good administrators in Warren County. In fact, probably the one that I feel the most influenced by is one of the former recipients of this award, Dr. John Blanton. I'd also like to thank my wife and family for their support. And again, I never expected this, and I really feel humbled, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. The only thing it didn't say anything about rowing.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
have a good evening. All right. Well, there we go. Next item on the agenda is reports. The first report will be refunding of school bonds through the Virginia Public School Authority, Davenport and Company.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Ted Cole with Davenport and Company. Appreciate having the opportunity to be here, and I understand there's a few county board members in the
Yes.
audience that will be hearing some of this at their next meeting on September 15th, and I guess we had sort of thought this might be an opportunity for everybody to hear the information at the same time, not
Absolutely.
looking for any action this evening. In fact, in order to get the process started on participating in what's called the Virginia Public School Authority, which is a state-run school funding program, the school board has to take an initial action. It's non-binding, but the school board does that, and I believe that you all did that on August 19th. So that set the ball rolling, but in no means commits anybody to doing anything. The second step is holding a public hearing at the county board level, and there's a county board resolution that they will consider, and we've got that scheduled for September 15th. So the objective tonight is to explain what the potential refundings, plural, are all about and how they work, and answer any questions that you might have. I believe all of you have a copy of our memo or our presentation. It's dated August 31. And you may have seen prior versions of this. It's very similar. All we did yesterday was update it for current market interest rates, so you had a real-time look at the potential refunding. There are page numbers in the lower right corner. And so let me, if I could, set the stage, and I would encourage any of you all to stop me along the way if there's a question or something you'd like explained a little differently. On page 1, what we are looking at is a potential refunding of 2 existing series of bonds. One that was issued in 2013 related to the Luray Avenue Middle School, and one that was issued in 2014 related to the Warren County Middle School. So they're both completely school related. As such, we're eligible, or the county's eligible, to participate in the Virginia Public School Authority. They are exclusively a school funding mechanism, whether you're borrowing money to build a new school or renovate a school, or you're thinking about refunding a piece of debt that funded a school previously, which is the case here. We are able to refund one or both of these through the VPSA if we choose, and I'll talk a little more about that. For now, when we've run our analyses, we're assuming that they're both being done together. There are some subtleties to how this refunding is sort of transacted. In one respect, it's very straightforward in that we have existing fixed rate bonds, and we're going to be going into fixed rate bonds. We're not introducing any variable rate debt. We are not talking about extending the debt or shortening the debt. So when the 13 bond matures, it will continue to mature at that same pace and final payment, and the same on the 14s. But there are some mechanics to doing the refunding that I wanted to make sure we kind of talk through, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of the discussion is, could we do better by waiting, right? We know there's a real opportunity to produce debt service savings in the current market. But I think inevitably the question is, well, would we do better if we waited, right? And we don't know the answer to that. Hindsight will be 20/20. Several years from now, we could look back and say, what would have been the best time to refund these bonds? And so, while we can't answer the question definitively, would we do better by waiting, I wanted to at least give you some of the concepts to think about, and particularly for the county board to think about prior to on the 15th, when they would potentially consider approval. Okay? A couple of the details on the existing bonds are on page 2. The first one just gives you the high-level overview of the 13 bonds. At the time, they were $7.6 million that were issued. They have a final maturity of September 2028, and they are prepayable at par or 100%, no penalty. We are looking to refund all of the outstanding maturities of that bond from 9/1/21 to 9/1/28. It's a little under $4.5 million that's left, and it has a current rate of 2.83%. On the 14s, it was a larger deal, bigger project. The issue amount was $42.4 million. The final maturity is 2039. Okay, they are callable on 7/15/24 at par. Now, the 13s are callable or prepayable immediately. The 14s, this is where things get slightly complex, the 14s, the people, the investors that own those bonds, are guaranteed not to have those bonds taken from them until the call date of 2024. That does not preclude you from refunding them. If we refund them, we take the money and we put it in an escrow account that is dedicated for these bonds. The money is invested, and that money will pay those bonds off, the interest and principal that's due to the bondholders, such that the county and the schools are no longer obligated to pay anything on the 2014 bonds when we close. Rather, what you'll be paying on is the 2020 bonds. Okay, so the bonds won't actually be pulled out of the market until 2024, but for the purposes of the county and schools and budgeting, the 2014 bonds are fully defeased. Okay, and I'm going to show you the net impact of doing that, but that's what we call an advance refunding. That escrow required means this is an advance refunding. And the second important part of that is that means that the bonds that we would sell today have to be sold on a taxable basis. Normally, local governments sell bonds on a tax-exempt basis. These would be done on a taxable basis. Taxable rates are very attractive, but all things being equal, you'd rather do a tax-exempt financing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's sort of the analysis of would we be better off waiting. The bonds that are out there today have interest rates that range from 3% to 5%. Okay? So when we set up the 13 bonds only on page 3, this is just the 13 bonds. On the left-hand side, we're going to go through the key results. We're refunding $4.4 million that have a current rate of 2.83%. I'm kind of going down the line on the left side. They're prepayable at any time at 100% or par, no penalty. And we're refunding the bonds that go out to 2028. The final maturity will remain 2028, so we're not extending that debt. And the new interest rate that we've estimated based on rates this week is 0.59%. So you can see a significant improvement over the 2.83% that the bonds currently carry. So that's where the savings are being generated. We're going to sub 1% interest rate. And we calculate interest rates a couple ways, with and without the issuance costs on lines 10 and 11. But the point is, in both methods of calculating the interest, we are well below 1%. And the result of doing this creates total savings over the remaining life of the loan, going out to 2028, of about $430,000. All right, and you can see on the right-hand side that you would recognize those dollars, or the county would recognize those dollars year over year at about $53,000 per year on average. Over the remaining 7 or 8 years, the total of $431 will have been recognized, but you recognize it year by year. So the county's debt service budget would be going down by about $50,000 a year. Now keep in mind, this is a current estimate. The VPSA program will not sell their bonds until October 20th. So if the county board takes action on 9/15, we still have about a month before the VPSA program sells their bonds and we lock in our interest rates. For that reason, included in the county board's resolution will be a parameter that says if we cannot achieve a minimum level of savings of X, we don't move forward, and we're not obligated to move forward, and there aren't any costs. So there's some protection. There is protection, not some protection. There's protection that as we establish the minimum threshold of savings, when October 20th rolls around, when the bonds are actually sold, if we can achieve that minimum level of savings, it moves forward. If we cannot, it stops, and we revisit it next year, next spring, whatever it might be. These savings that we are showing here are already account for our estimated cost of issuance, right? So there's cost of issuance to doing a refunding transaction like this, be it the fees associated with our work, with the county's bond attorneys, and the VPSA program itself and the underwriting. There are fees associated with the program. We have accounted for those in our analysis, and after and the costs, which are pretty typical, are included in the borrowing. So the 2020 bonds that we would issue, we would borrow enough to pay off the bonds, but we'd also add to it enough to pay the issuance costs. So when we compare the annual payments now versus going forward, we're capturing the cost of issuance. So these are what I would call net savings.
Can I interrupt you 1 second, Mr. Cole?
Yes.
100% understand where you're going.
Okay.
And how you're presenting. I love it tonight. It's very, very clear and concise. But the cost for the county, the all-in total interest cost, is that number 11, the 0.671%?
Right.
Does that include what you have to borrow? Is that why it goes up from the 0.59?
Exactly right.
So that's our true number.
Correct.
That pays everybody else and...
Correct.
Okay.
That is the difference between lines 10 and 11.
Okay.
10 is purely the interest rate.
Right.
11 rolls in the issuance cost to do the transaction.
Okay. All right.
You've got
Thank
it,
you.
exactly.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. I'm sorry I'm a little hot.
Oh, it's all right. It's warm in here. I'll tell you.
So this one is fairly straightforward in that, again, it's paying off immediately. There's no escrow that I talked about a moment ago. That comes into play in the 2014 bond that I'm about to discuss. Okay? Any questions on the 13s?
No, sir.
Okay. So on page 4, we look at the same setup for the 2014 bonds. We're talking about refunding about $30.5 million of those that are eligible. They have rates that vary between 3 and 5%. By the way, these bonds in 2014 were issued through one of the VPSA programs. The 2013 bond is currently held by SunTrust Bank. That was a bank financing. This was done through VPSA. The call date, again, is July of 24. So that's what we have to deal with this escrow. We can't take these bonds out of the market until 2024. As a result, this is what we call an advance refunding, and what that means is when we borrow the money through VPSA, that money goes into an escrow and it's invested in U.S. Treasury securities, very specific securities. There's no latitude on what you invested in. And the current borrowing rate on a taxable basis is line 10, 202. When you figure in the cost of issuance, we're at about a 206. Now, why is that so much higher than the prior page? 1 is because it's taxable, and 2 because it goes out to 2040. But remember what the current bonds hold in terms of interest rates, 3 to 5%. So there are savings that are being generated there to the tune of about $1,890,000. And you can see on the right-hand side in green, that will be recognized over several years. Annually, and right now that's about $100,000 per year, where that the debt service budget would be reduced for this particular bond issue. It's still paying off at the same fiscal year. We have accounted for issuance costs, we've accounted for the VPSA program costs, and so there are, absolute and real savings to be gained. And the question here is, could we do better by waiting until we get closer to that call date of 2024, because if we wait till we get closer to 2024, we don't need that escrow. And that helps the efficiency of the transaction. What we don't know is what will our borrowing rates do between now and 2024. Okay? And so for that reason, what we've tried to show you on page 5 is an example of, or an analysis that looks at the potential outcome of waiting if rates don't change. We know we're in a very favorable rate environment. So when you look on page 5 under column B as in boy, that is the current market that I just discussed. It's a taxable financing, and the total savings are a 189. Column C just shows you what the savings do if rates go up by 10 basis points. So in other words, it goes from 2% to 2.10. Column C shows you what the savings do if rates go down by 10 basis points. Because remember, we're waiting until October 20th, and rates are going to bounce around day in and day out. And over the last couple of weeks, Treasury rates have gone higher by 10 to 20 basis points. So we want to make sure people understand that the savings will evolve as we're waiting for the VPSA sale date of 10/20. But again, we're going to recommend and work with staff to establish a minimum level of savings that we want to achieve in this transaction. The real, I think, important columns is column E as in Edward. This is a hypothetical case. If we could do this deal today, this refunding today, but do it on a tax-exempt basis. Right now, current tax law does not allow for that. There's discussions about bringing it back, but there's no real good sense of when and if that will happen. And what you'll see is the savings are up significantly. That's the value of being able to issue debt on a tax-exempt basis. That is not an option today, but we wanted to share it, and we had talked through that with county staff, and they thought like that would be helpful perspective. I'm going to skip over to column F. What we're doing now in column F is hypothetically waiting until the fall of '22. So we're basically waiting 2 years. And if interest rates stay exactly where they are, our savings would go up to $3.8 million, right? Now you'll notice on line 4, there's something called break even. If between now and then rates go up by 56 basis points, or basically 0.5%, we would have been better off. That's the break even. So if they go up by more than that, we would have been better off doing it sooner. If they don't go up by that much or they go down, waiting would have been the right thing to do. Take it all the way out to column G, which is where we wait to do this refunding on the call date. And when that happens, it can be done tax exempt because we're under a different tax law section there. It doesn't have to be taxable, it'd be tax exempt. If rates stay exactly where they are today, and they're there in November of '24, our savings would be about $6.3 million. So you can see that, there's a combination of waiting, and that escrow gets shorter and shorter and less impactful. But if rates stay the same, you have an opportunity to do better in the savings. We just don't know, and that's sort of what I led with initially is hindsight will be 20/20 on this. What we know is, within a reasonable range, unless we see extreme market movement, we're around $100,000 a year. This bond, if we were to do it in 2020, this bond would be able to be refunded again 10 years from now. So we could look at this again, and likely will in 2030, because it just stands to reason these bonds tend to get refunded more than once in their life. So you have an opportunity to move forward and lock in a certain level of savings, which sets the clock running on that 10-year no-call period where you could revisit this again in 2030. But alternatively, looking at these numbers or some other iteration of these numbers, there's certainly, I think, somebody could make a case to say, I think we should wait and see if we can do better later. And time will tell on that. The passage of time can help, but then the unknown is the rate movement. So I know there's a lot there, and it's not necessarily information that a lot of us deal with day to day, but that's really gets to the heart, I think, of the 2014 bond decision. I'm going to skip over page 6 unless there's a question and just wrap up on page 7, which puts the two of these side by side. So potentially doing both of them through the VPSA program, the 13s and the 14s. And you'll see, the savings over there are a little more front-loaded because the 13s pay off more quickly, but it's $150,000 a year plus or minus for about the first 9 years, and then it's about $100,000 a year. Grand total about $2.3 million. 3 or 4 weeks ago, that grand total was closer to $3.1 million, right? So we have seen taxable interest rates go up in the last 3 weeks. They might continue that path, they might level off, they might come down. We would propose to provide an update to the county board at their 9/15 meeting. And then, as I said a couple times, if they want to consider a resolution at that meeting, there will be included a savings threshold or parameter. Normally, the savings threshold is tied to what we call net present value savings, which is a percentage. You can see it. I'm sorry, the lines aren't numbered, but you can see it there at 7.6%. That is a calculation that we look at in the bond finance world that says is comparing the savings to the amount of debt you're refunding. So our net present value savings as a percent of the debt we're refunding is 7.6%. We may want to say, look, we want to achieve at least 4% savings or at least 5% savings. We would propose to talk through that with county staff and land at a recommendation for the county board to consider as part of their resolution on the 15th. Big picture, if there's a desire to move forward, as I said, there's a resolution on 9/15. VPSA requires all of that to be done by October 5th, so we would be well ahead of that. And if we decide to move forward, their bond sale is on October 20th. That's the date where they sell the bonds, lock in the rates, and then they close in early November, which is when the dollars move and pay off the old debt or fund the escrow. Any questions?
I have one. On the 2014 bonds, we owe $30,590,000, and the interest rate or coupon rate is between 3 and 5%.
Right?
Do you have any idea what the breakdown is? How many bonds are at the 5% and how many are at the 3?
I do, generally speaking.
Just rough idea.
If you go back to page 6
Okay.
and you look on the left-hand side,
Yes, sir.
do you see the par amount,
Yes.
right? This is going to be just, you got to kind of, just give me one second.
I'll bear with you. Take your time, young man.
So it starts in 2025, right?
Correct.
The first two have a 5% coupon. The next 1, 2, 3, then there's 3 of them at 3%.
Okay.
Then there's a 3.125, 3.25, 3.25, 3.5, and 33, and everything else is 4. And that is a function of the bond market that VPSA sells to. It's not like a bank loan where you get a single rate for the
Right.
entire term. They're selling bonds through what we call the public bond market, and investors are actually buying individual maturities with different coupons. That does not mean your interest rate changes or your payment changes. It just means that we calculate the debt service using lots of different coupons.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Cole?
No, I've been sitting here with the graph from the last meeting comparing the numbers, and there certainly has been a change in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, not in the right direction.
No.
Yeah, no, 70,000.
One of our benchmark rate indices that we look at for the 14s, because it's taxable, is U.S. Treasuries. And the 10-year U.S. Treasury is something that is sort of a bellwether. From August 4th
Right.
to August 31st, the 10-year Treasury went up 20 basis points. Keep in mind, it was in the low 0.5%. It went up to 0.72. So, I mean, as you know, it went up almost 50%, right? And that's a pretty big move. And there's a number of things that will influence that, some of which maybe seem obvious and some less so. One was the U.S. government was issuing a lot of treasuries, and it was a supply-demand, and investors had an opportunity to push the rates up because the U.S. Treasury needed to sell more debt. And then you have things like the stock market seems to do nothing but go up here recently, and that sometimes causes a different effect in bond rates where they go up to try to keep pace or remain an attractive alternative. You know, events nationally, internationally, I mean, any number of things will move the Treasury market. But we have seen, which is not supportive of what we're trying to do here, more increases in rates than decreases in the last couple of weeks. But I've also come to learn that these things can reverse themselves pretty quickly. So that's the reason why we'll have a fresh look at it on the 15th, and we'll have something that the board is comfortable saying, if we can get X, we're good, but we don't want to be exposed to, any result based on rates moving, and we'll have that protection built in.
Okay, all right. Anything else?
Ted,
Yes?
can you mention just really quickly the option that we built in to convert to standalone if the market does go haywire around the VPSA sale?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So VPSA has two programs. One is the pool, and they do that every fall and every spring, and you're in a pool of bonds that they sponsor with lots of other local governments. And that is the sale we're targeting. The timing works well for us, it's efficient, but we have put a provisional application in with VPSA for what they call the standalone program. It is still part of VPSA, and in fact, that's what the 2014 bonds were, but you are able to, you're kind of in a pool of your own. So if you determine, hey, we can't participate in your fall or spring pool because of one reason or another, or in our case, we can't get the savings we want, the provisional approval that we've asked VPSA for the standalone would allow you to potentially take advantage of this in January or February if things came back to an attractive level. It's not automatic. It would still have to go back to the board for discussion. But since the VPSA board, I believe, only meets twice a year, if we think there's a chance we might want to do a standalone, we usually get the approval in the fall, which is good until they meet again in the spring. But so if we don't participate in the fall, for whatever reason, we will have a plan B if it makes sense to participate through this standalone program, which can happen most any time, but it will have to be sort of reaffirmed by the board before we were to do that. In other words, we won't just show up one day in January and say, hey, we did the pool or the standalone. Thank you, John, for that. That's important.
Yeah, I was like, who was hollering at you, Mr. Cole? I could hear a voice, but
Right.
with the mask. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cole. We
Okay.
look forward to
Appreciate
your
it very
again.
much.
Have a good evening. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us. All right. Superintendent report. Dr. Ballinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
First, I would like to mention that we received a notification from the State Department of Education, and this is just the Virginia Department of Education would like to thank for us in our special education. The VDOE is, oh, sorry, Tim. The VDOE is required to make determinations for each school division based on their submitted APR data to determine categories as follows: meets requirement, needs assistant, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. Based on our data, Warren County Public Schools was recognized as meets requirement within our special education department. And when you look at the data sheet that they presented, there were only two areas. So out of the total score of 40 total points available, we had a 37. And those two areas were in SOL assessments for our special education students. And so those will be two areas that we'll focus on going forward to make sure that our special education students are able to work towards passing those SOLs.
Good.
Convocation again was held on August 26th and 28th. Our Teachers of the Year and support personnel were recognized. Had a lot of positive feedback for the way that we did our support personnel and Teacher of the Year. I want to thank Mr. Williams for starting us off this year with his Go Get 'em letter or introduction. So, and then I followed him, and then we went into introducing our support personnel. And our support person, staff person of the year was Kimberly Jankowskis. She's AS Rhodes Secretary.
Yes.
And bookkeeper. The elementary teacher of the year is Kimberly Brown. She is a special education teacher at Hilda J. Barber. And then the secondary teacher of the year was Miss Darcy Cupp, and she is a a Math 8 and Algebra 1 teacher at Skyline Middle School. And then again, as Kim mentioned earlier, that we had two keynote speakers, Jerry Brooks and Eddie B. They gave a lot of good positive reinforcements, that this year is going to be challenging. We need to look through, other people's lenses, as Jerry would say, to watch our professional jealousy as other people are being successful, not to be jealous, but to go ask them for assistance and to help you. And so there was a lot of good positive things that came from that, from our convocation this year. Teacher trainings were held August 24th and 28th on the LMS and our CIP, the Learning Management System, and the Comprehensive Instructional Program. Teachers continue to participate in training on both platforms, and they're working diligently. Yesterday and today and tomorrow are designated as days for parents and students to pick up their devices and to have an opportunity for training on the device and how to use the LMS and access it. Staff members are also answering other questions that parents may have concerning virtual or in-person instruction. The helpline that Mr. Grant put up, and thanks to Mr. Wells and his recommendation to put those stickers on each of those Chromebooks. We've got those on there. Tim and his team have already been answering phone calls on the helpline, so that's up and going. And then again, Tim did a great presentation for the community and talking about our technology and what to expect. Also, the principals have been visiting the central office. They've been picking up their Wi-Fi hotspots, and they've been going back and checking those out to students that may need those. So we're ready to start school. We're excited to get things going and bring our students back. AS Roads received their temporary occupancy. Teachers are working diligently to get those classrooms prepared. And I think Mrs. Shepherd told us that if anybody wants to put their jeans on and go out and help them move boxes, they're accepting all comers to come and assist. So, no, it looks good out there, and I know they're working hard to prepare for Tuesday. So, there's a couple other things here. One, we were called to a virtual meeting with Valley Health this week, and I sat in on one, and then Mr. Smith sat in on one, and basically Valley Health and Anthem are not connecting right now through negotiations, and I'm just making you aware right now they're if they do not get the contract negotiated, then Valley Health will no longer be in network with Anthem after December 31st. Now, we have a long time between now and the end of the year, and surely they can get something worked out. But through our communication, we'll continue to communicate with our teachers. We will be putting out basically a memo to our staff tomorrow to let them know. I know that other divisions and other government entities are putting out notifications, and so we wanted our people to hear it from us first. So we will hopefully have that out tomorrow to our teachers, but right now they have coverage. Nothing has changed, and as we gain information concerning this update, then we will let them know. But we will get the initial word out tomorrow, so hopefully they can come together and come to agreement on some terms. The final thing that I kind of wanted to just touch on tonight was, due to COVID-19, we've had a lot of expenses that, one, we're not really planned for through the budgeting process. And I'm going to do a little bit of a recap of our budget. When our budget was prepared, there was $462,000 that were in anticipated reduction in sales tax. And having the foresight to see that and to prepare for that, we also planned for a $531,000 contingency fund. And then remember last year when the governor unallocated funds to schools, and that figure was around $927,000. So, you know, in preparing for which direction we needed to go, we had some of these things that we were planning for, and then hoping maybe the governor would give us the money back later on. Our current adjustments, we received a memo 21520 a couple of weeks ago, and our sales tax was reduced by $446,000. So the foresight of having a reduction of anticipated reduction of $462,000 was pretty close. So also there will be a little bit of a balance because the sales tax will go down. The basic aid will come up just a little bit, but it's not going to be proportional. So it's not dollar for dollar, but there will be a little bit of a bump that may not make that as painful. So it will be a little bit of a kick, but not a lot. And then, of course, all of those unallocated funds, they were not reinstated. So that money was continued to be taken off of the table and not allocated to schools. So still, even with where we're at, schools are required to still continue to provide services and follow the standards of quality that are in code and that are required by the State Board of Education. So to date, the state superintendent has not waived requirements related to planning time, class size requirements. The only waiver that they've really given us was for K-3 class size. And when you look at our K-3 class size numbers and this waiver, it only affects us by 1 or 2 students. So it's not a huge number that we can put more students in that classroom because our numbers are right there at that threshold already. That means we may be able to add 1 student in 1 class, which really wouldn't be a benefit at all. Some non-funded mandates this year. The Board of Education has placed a reporting requirements on school divisions. We will have periodic reports throughout the school year that we're going to have to submit to them on how education is going in this pandemic. And so we will be looking for processes and how we're going to handle that going forward. So when you look at the time-based, I'm struggling with that thing.
Go ahead, Dr. Brown.
Sorry.
6 feet away.
You're more than 6.
Yes, oh my goodness. I was definitely struggling with that. Sorry, I apologize for taking this off.
You're fine.
Whew. Okay, so time-based requirements. We still have our length of the school term and our core instruction, so minimum requirements are still in place to ensure that learners receive the amount of instruction time that is equal to their peers. So for instance, at the elementary school, we still have to maintain, our 680 hours. At the middle school, you still have to maintain your 560 hours. Now, of course, at the high school, it's based off a seat time of 140, but we also have policy that will allow, there's always been policies to allow flexibility at the high school level with your seat time. So we still have to maintain that time for instruction. We also still have to maintain our class sizes. So we have to make sure that all of that is still in place. So since we have to still continue to follow those guidelines, add all the COVID-19 expenditures in that we're not planned for. So really when we look at our additional expenditures for COVID-19, our special services so far have expenditures of just over $60,000. $60,869.23. Facilities have expenditures of $44,232. Technology, Tim's ducking back there, has an expenditure of $846,451,000. Instruction, $65,134. Transportation, $6,525, and then between all of our schools, $43,876 for a grand total of $1,067,090.32 that we've expended so far due to COVID-related expenditures that really were not planned for in the budgeting process. So funding that has helped, again, the County CARES Act has helped by $300,000 to help with the technology side of the $800,000 that we had expenditures. We also have the CARES Act funding that we received as a school division was $708,000, and then our Title I and Title IV funds that we reallocated of $185,000, which is a total of additional funds that we have been able to pull together of $1,193,360. So when you look at that figure minus what we've expended already due to COVID-related expenditures, that leaves us with about $126,000 left for the rest of the year to prepare for any other expenditures that we may have due to COVID-related expenses. And Ms. Shepherd and I were talking today, and we were looking at these numbers, and I was like, oh goodness, we just told Mr. Livesey to go ahead and order extra sanitation, because we know that when we go in and start cleaning these rooms, we have to have that on hand, and that's a requirement. So there's been a lot that has been put on the school budget this year due to COVID-related expenses. And I do want to thank the Board of Supervisors for helping us with the technology and the $300,000 for purchasing of those Chromebooks. That's going to go a long way in making sure that our students are able to have a great learning experience this year. So I do want to thank them, as I know they're in attendance. So other than that, we're ready for school on Tuesday. I would just like to remind everybody that it's been a while. It's been 6 months since those little ones have been riding their bikes to school, or walking to school, or parents or car riders or buses. That please remember that when the red stop sign's out, stop for the safety of our children. Just be aware that we're going to be on the roads pretty heavy on Tuesday. So because it's been 6 months, it's out of sight, out of mind. And those school zone lights will be flashing. So just prepare that our students are going to be out and about, and we need to make sure that their safety is top priority.
Thank you, Dr. Ballinger, for your report. Let me recap what my takeaway is. We spent an extra $1.1 million roughly, simply because of COVID, above our normal budget. If we didn't have COVID, we wouldn't have spent it.
Great.
But business carries on in the school system no matter what. We still have to pay the mortgages, pay the teachers, pay the electric bill, and all that. So $1.1 million unplanned for is pretty tough. We are fortunate that the Board of Supervisors did give us $300,000 to help make sure we're one-to-one with every student, simply because they have to be home or somewhere.
Yes, sir.
And be able to go to school. So we spent a lot of money that we didn't have, but we had to, because that was what we were told we had to do. And it kind of makes it a tough road to travel for everybody.
It does. Yes, sir.
I appreciate your information. It's very enlightening. And thank you for what you do, and Ms. Shepherd for what you do with getting our numbers together, and everybody else that's on your team in your office. I know how hard you guys work, and we appreciate it. All right, moving on. School board reports. Dr. Pence.
Thank you, Dr. Ballinger, for your report. Thank you to everyone getting ready for school to start on Tuesday. I know everyone at this point is probably just really looking forward to getting back to it, and hopefully everyone just really has a successful first day and year coming up. Some of our students actually have already started back last week at Mountain Vista Governor's School. It's been going well so far. It sounds like last week was more of a review type week. This week started new material. They're doing a mix of real-time school through their virtual learning, and also having an opportunity for students to go back and view it at their own time as well. And so far it sounds like it's a great first couple of weeks for them.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Pence. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, congratulations to special ed for a great report. Mr. Grant, thank you for your public presentation, and I would encourage anybody out there who hasn't seen it to go and take a look at it, because it's a lot of good information about how technology is going to work this year and how it works. And again, I would encourage any parent who has a question to call the school board office if that's, or call your school, and we will try to get an answer for you. I know these are strange times, and there are questions even beyond the normal first of the year questions. Students moving to middle school, students moving to high school from middle school, and just the normal changes as well as some of the craziness. Thanks to the Board of Supervisors for the extra IT funds. Also, since I've got you here, I understand you're working on trying to extend broadband to the county and to create a work group to try and get that. That's something that's been a fight for several years, and if there's anything we can do, or just cheerily, we would certainly appreciate that the whole county was covered by broadband, so that our students didn't have to use hotspots or try to go to a Wi-Fi site or even take home canned messages or information so that they can learn. But in the Convocation, I was able to tune into that, and some of you guys have faces that are made for radio, but
Thank you, Mr. Wells. You're right, though.
but it was strange, but we'll get through it, and that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Rinaldi.
I'd like to thank Kathy Bowers about showing me the picture of the new window treatments at E. Morse and Wilson. E. Wilson Morrison, sorry. That's been on my agenda for a long time, trying to get that done. So I think people got tired of hearing me on it, but it got done. So thank you for showing me that. I'll drop by and see him next week. I look forward to getting back into the schools. My original goal when I was on this board was to get to the schools and meet all the principals and the assistant principals and see what was going on. Of course, we were unable to do that from the get-go, I guess. So I look forward to getting out to the schools and seeing everybody. And I really want to thank Kim for her quote. I wrote it down. Not hard, just new. And I tell you what, that's a pretty profound statement. I appreciate that, and I'll try to keep it in the back of my mind. Thank you. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rinaldi. Ms. Bauer.
Thank you. I typically try to get around to all the schools before they start in September or August, and this year I did attend all of the schools, walk around the buildings. I did not go inside. I figured they had enough going on inside, and I'm sure everything looks great. That the floors were always shiny and well waxed and buffed, and everything looks so sparkly new, and I'm sure it's that way now. I did take a picture of E. Wilson Morrison's new shades out front. I know how much Mr. Rinaldi was going crazy over having those ripped, torn, old shades, and it looks really nice. I want to shout out and thank, I know we've thanked our teachers and all of our staff, but our nurses. I've had the opportunity to speak to a few of our nurses this week, and they're taking on a whole new load. So just thank them for all that they do and all that they're going to be doing for our students. I did have the opportunity, as I was walking around the schools, to talk to a handful of teachers, and I think that they are feeling better, a better comfort level about what they have to do and how it's going to be done. It's going to be different, and it might be a little hairy the first couple of weeks, but I think they're ready to jump back in and go on. And I think that's all I have. So I wish everyone a good first day of school, and like Dr. Ballinger said, the community, please be aware of all those little ones out and about.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bauer. I was fortunate enough to give opening comments virtually this year. I'd much rather have a crowd in front of me where I can see warm eyes instead of this computer, and it's like, whatever. But Mr. Smith, wherever you're at, and Ms. Rudisill, thank you for getting me through that. You guys did a wonderful job. Ms. Oakland, Ms. Kim was so excited that she got that award, and I can only imagine what her new office will look like at AS Roads this year. And you know, those are the people that you guys work for, and you can tell she was very appreciative of everything. The room looked like everybody was having fun from what I've seen. I mean, I think it was a great opening. Dr. Ballinger, you brought that together, and I appreciate that very much. Mr. Wells, you're right about the radio. There's no doubt about that. I know at least one. That's the only place they should be seen. What's that? Better heard than seen, or something like that. School's opening September the 8th. I can't wait. I just wish every child was back in a seat in the classroom. But unfortunately, not right now. But I did see our COVID numbers were down for Warren County, so that's a plus. So I look forward to next Tuesday and having everybody back or online or however we're going to do it this year. So let's have a tremendous 2020. Let's end strong. I mean, I think my opening comments were when we were ringing in the new year, nobody would have ever believed that 3 months later we'd be going through this. And those, to me, are no truer words. And but you know what? You've adapted, you've overcome. I don't like the saying the new normal. Let's just get back to normal, you know. But we have learned from this, and we will continue to learn. Let's just keep pushing forward. And Ms. Shepherd, you need some help. They don't have to just have jeans on. Take whatever you're wearing. Come see Ms. Shepherd. All right, next item is action agenda. Approval of July 2020 VSB School Board Policy Updates. Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you. And since we have a captive audience here of our Board of Supervisors, if you guys want to attend or go to AS Roads, I'm available on Friday to give you guys a tour. So Interim County Administrator, you guys are all welcome to come and be happy to tour you through AS Roads Elementary School because you guys helped us get to that point. So and it's gorgeous. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay.
In July 20... Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And school board members as well. So, yes. July 2020, VSBA submitted 4 policies for consideration by the Warren County School Board. A chart showing the updated policies has been prepared by staff members noting the proposed changes. The first reading of the proposed changes was August the 5th, 2020. The second reading and discussion was scheduled was August 19th, 2020, and the recommendation is to approve the policy changes at this meeting tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have none.
Mrs. Shepherd has answered my questions already.
Nothing. I think this is our third reading, and
It
you've
is.
explained it very well every time. So thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move the July 2020 VSBA policy updates be approved for inclusion in the Warren County Public Schools Policy Manual as recommended by staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Lease agreement for Warren County Youth Center. Mr. Hirsch.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Ballinger, members of the board, thanks for the opportunity to come speak with you today. I would like to reiterate what Ms. Bauer said. The nurses have really gone into warp drive. If anyone knows that and walks into a clinic at any time in previous years, you know how busy those clinics are. Their responsibilities and the tasks that they're doing is astronomical, and they have stepped up. And we met today, and their questions are good, they're thoughtful, and they are working very hard. So thank you for that.
We also have 3 new nurses this year.
We do. And they have really fit in. They're taking, one of them all of them are taking leadership roles, not only in the county, but not only in their buildings, but in the county as well. So we really got some great new nurses, and I couldn't be happier with our school nurses, the way they're really supporting our kids. So thank you for that. Well, due to, as far as the lease agreement for the Warren County Youth Center, due to COVID-19, well, you're all familiar with the Elements program at Lord Fairfax Community College. It's a program that supports adults 18 to 22 with low incident disabilities. And what they do, it's after you exit high school. And because students can be, if they don't graduate with an advanced diploma or a standard diploma, they can be educated until their 22nd birthday. To me, 8 years in a high school is not necessarily optimum. So we created multiple opportunities of community-based instruction, and the most recent one, 3 years ago, was the Elements program at Lord Fairfax Community College, where students with low incident disabilities can go to the college and participate in a variety of academic skills, some job shadowing, and work towards competitive employment. If you would go on to Lord Fairfax campus last year, you'll see our students in the gym, in the mailroom, in the subway, restaurant, and all those areas with our job coaches and with our teachers supporting them. Due to COVID-19, that opportunity is on hold for a year. So we thought and we brainstormed and we figured out, well, what are we going to do? So with many past opportunities of collaborating with the Parks and Rec Department and Director Dan Lenz, we came up with the idea together of looking at the possibility of utilizing the St. Myers Youth Center for the students to be housed in the community, because sending the message that you're going back to your high schools is not the message we want to send. We love our high schools. They spent 4 years there. So we thought of a community-based approach where the students could be housed at St. Myers Youth Center and work with the Parks and Rec, just be a presence, get those academic skills, those soft employment skills, and our job coaches are already working in the town of Front Royal with local businesses and local nonprofit agencies to create opportunities for our adult learners to be productive and learn how to hopefully become competitively employed. So that being said, the county has been great working with the Parks and Rec Department, and the next step was to put together a lease. And the assistant county attorney did that and presented it to us, and Dr. Ballinger and Ms. Shepard read through it, and they did what they do. And I'm here to ask you for approval of that this evening.
How many students do we typically have going through this program?
There's generally 8 to 10 students, aged 18 to 22, in the program at any one time. We're constantly, it's a big jump, and we're constantly supporting them in our community-based instruction programs at Warren County High School and Skyline High School, which are in the community working and doing some of those same things. So we're preparing them. And it's a 2-year program, so we definitely don't want them in there when they're 18. We kind of want to wait until they're 20, and then they can go in the last 2 years. So we're prepping. We have a whole pool of students that do a variety of things at the 18 to 20-year-old, and as they move forward into this really a pinnacle program of supporting kids. So 8 to 10.
Okay. And they're
I know
going
that's
to
a
be
long
using,
answer.
they're going to be using all of the youth center?
No, absolutely not. There is, but that was our first thought. We're going to use this youth
I
center.
have a hard time understanding,
Yeah.
you know. with police.
That was our thought. But in going through the building with Director Lenz, there is actually a classroom off to the side. And I hear from some folks that when it was open was supporting a lot of kids, there was a game room. And then there's a little office off of that. And that is actually the perfect size for our students that are in-person learning. We do have a couple that are learning virtual and remotely, but our students, we have plenty of space for the students, for the 8 students that are going to be in-person instruction.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion? I have a motion.
I move that the lease agreement for the use of the St. Mary's Youth Center classroom be approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hirsch.
I just wanted to say, I read the article this morning about the bakery over in Winchester and
Yep.
its closing, and just how devastating that is for those folks who work there and that kind of thing, and to shut this program down would do the same thing to our students. So I'm glad that you guys came up with a solution, and I appreciate the county working with us to find a site and a program that will work for them.
Next thing, Mr. Hirsch, change in law firm for special education. I guess changing law
Yeah.
firm but not lawyer.
Correct.
Okay.
We've worked with Reed Smith, well, I've worked with them for the past 2 decades, and, you know, it's a good thing because we really don't have to use them that much, because the teachers and parents and all of our staff do such a wonderful job of collaborating, and when there is disagreements, mediating, and we really have limited, we work with them, but it's been a limited experience, and that's a good thing. However, we have a close relationship with the attorneys that were at Reed Smith. Reed Smith is a very, very big company, and the attorneys that represented special education for most of the divisions in the Commonwealth were looking at ways to save school divisions money. And the rates at the new firm were significantly lower. So what they decided to do was because they know how comfortable we are with them, they're all moving to Sans Anderson. And we elected to, with your approval, we elected to change companies and keep the attorneys that we've been working with for over 2 decades.
We already deal with Sans Anderson.
Yeah. So just the attorneys left. Reed Smith's still in.
Reed Smith is still in.
Okay.
But yeah, the group of attorneys that we, in essence, Mr. Williams, the lead attorney that we worked with very well is no longer doing cases. She is reaching a point in her career where she's doing some other things, podcasts and different kinds of things. And the main attorney that we've been working with over the past 5 years is him, and 3 other attorneys are moving to Sans Anderson with the lead attorney's blessing.
Okay. I think I know who you're speaking of, I think. Okay. I knew he was moving, but I didn't know where. All right. Questions, comments? No?
I guess the only question, since we will be utilizing Sans Anderson as for everything, do we have separate contracts? Is there some way to consolidate those contracts?
That, I guess we'd have to look at that as far as to see what contracts are stated. As far as I know that it's an hourly rate. I know that with the transition, they had asked for us to see if we wanted to move all of our documents over with them as they transition, since we've been with those attorneys for a long time. And so that is one reason that I asked for Mr. Hirsch to present that tonight, just to make sure that you guys are aware that we were making that change and to approve that change, because we wanted the consistency. But that is definitely something that we can look at, since that is now in process. Yes, sir.
With that, I would move that the company of Sans Anderson PC be used for legal counseling regarding special education.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hirsch.
Thank you.
Addition of instructional assistant for VPI program, Ms. Rudisill.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Due to an increase in funding from the Virginia Preschool Initiative grant, the school system is able to serve additional preschool students this year. Therefore, we are requesting approval for the creation of a new instructional assistance position to aid in serving the needs of these students. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah. What's our number?
Okay, last year we served 92 4-year-olds. This year, as of today, we are serving 146 preschool students total. We entered the pilot program to expand our preschool program to serve 3-year-olds as well. So we have 31 3-year-olds that we'll be serving. So 146 total. We actually given the state formula, could serve up to 130 4-year-olds and 45 3-year-olds, but we just don't have the space to fit them all in, and especially not in our current circumstances.
That program has grown just phenomenally.
Yes.
I mean, it is truly amazing to me what it was 2 years ago.
Yes, and Jenny Donovan, our family engagement
Yes.
coordinator, is
Worth her weight in
is
gold.
integral. That's not even a strong enough word in making that happen. I mean,
Yes.
it has exploded, and it's been wonderful.
It really has. It astounds me every time I hear the numbers. So.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Rudisil?
And we do have the space with the distancing and,
We do. As you all go around to visit schools as the school year begins, we have preschool classrooms in Skyline High School's library. Our class that was formerly well, it's not formerly, it still isn't existent, but the child care program at Skyline High School, Mrs. Fry has taken on several preschool students, so like its own little lab school there. We have 2 preschool classrooms at Blue Ridge Technical Center. They're everywhere. So in order to expand, the area in which those children can be, Mrs. Donovan and the preschool staff have been very creative, and administrators across all age levels have been very welcoming to the preschool classes.
That's great.
we don't have any virtual preschool students.
Oh, we do indeed. Look, I have it written down here, waiting for someone to ask me. 35 virtual
35 of the 146?
preschool, yes. 35 virtual preschool students. Some of those are 3 and some of those are 4-year-olds.
Wow.
Don't ask me how that's going to work.
Yeah,
The number is the last of the information I have for you.
I'll fill you in, I know one of them.
Whew. Okay, good.
I have a 3-year-old come to my house every day, every morning, and how you can do that virtually, I have no
Virtually.
No, I'm sorry. All right,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Certainly.
All right,
Do you want a motion?
need one.
I move that we approve the addition of an instructional assistant position to serve preschool students in the VPI program.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Ms. Rudisil. Approval of September 2nd, 2020 personnel reports. Oh, addendum, Mr. Smith.
Good evening. This item follows along with Mrs. Rudisil's presentation and your approval of the new position. The personnel addendum is being presented as an action item due to one of the appointments being dependent upon the previous approval of the new VPI instructional assistant position.
That's it. Questions for Mr. Smith? Well, need a motion?
I move that the September 2nd, 2020 personnel report addendum be approved as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, discussion by the school board, 2020 VSBA Annual Conference, November 18th through the 20th, and it's all virtual this year, guys, so I guess we'll have to get on a line.
Will we be meeting here to do that virtually, or?
We could,
I would
I
prefer
mean,
that.
we could use, could we use the conference room down there? That'd probably be either.
Yes,
Or
we could do
upstairs.
that.
Or
Yeah, we could-
upstairs.
we could
Probably
use either
upstairs
conference
wouldn't affect
Okay.
your daily business.
Yeah, I'll get that scheduled.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that's, yeah, yeah.
Concentrate a little.
Yeah, because you won't have the interruptions that you
Yes.
could have at home. All right, fair enough. Next is VSBA Superintendent's Evaluation Workshop, October 7th, 2020. It's virtual if anybody be interested. Talk to Mr. Ballantyne. Any other business before this board? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.